Hello, you've caught me thinking about growing old.
It's something I do regularly. I mean, I can't help it. My own face sort of forces thoughts of my own mortality upon me whenever I see it in a mirror, thanks face. But it's not just crow's feet and a lack of hair that helps me mark my progress through the years. Video games have grown up alongside us, and this is true no matter how old you are, but particularly if you're about my age, you'll notice a startling parallel between what's going on with you and what's going on with games.
When you started out aged 5 or 6, video games were bright and bathed in primary colours.
They often starred anthropomorphized animal protagonists, had the jump button as your primary method of attack, and featured enemies that turned into fruit when you, inverted commas, killed them.
Then you hit your teenage years and all of a sudden video games become a bubbling cauldron of conflict, emotion and brown.
Video games, like us, were growing up, searching for the next foothold on their ascent towards maturity, and often that meant sequels that were tonally completely different to their predecessors.
Here are 7 times video game sequels went so dark we barely recognised them.
First up, we've got Jak 2, which shocked everyone when it arrived in 2003, everyone who hadn't seen the box art or read the Renegade subtitle, by being all angsty and set in an open world city with run-down bits and an oppressive Orwellian government. You only needed to watch the intro to know that Jak 2 was getting serious, however. Our hero is strapped to a table, insinuating months of torture, but most importantly, his voice has dropped.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Right out of the sky. He didn't even have a voice in the Precursor legacy, and he has dark eco powers as a result of all the suffering.
It's a rage he struggles to control, creating an interesting parallel between the game and its audience who, like me, were kids when the likes of Crash Bandicoot were around, but are now struggling with the pressures of adolescence.
We had secondary school and peer pressure and physical and emotional transformation. Jak had an optional goatee and purple plasma stuff coming out of his hands, which is basically the same thing. It also helped that Jak 2 was brilliant and that running around Haven City, stealing hover cars and blowing people into next week with magic shotguns was amazing, endless fun. What a transformation. The second entry on our list is the second entry in the Prince of Persia trilogy. Now, if you'd played Sands of Time, a comparatively cheery adventure starring a light-hearted, wall-running prince and featuring music inspired by the Arabian setting, you'd be forgiven for booting up the sequel Warrior Within and wondering, who on earth is this royal grouchy puss I'm now controlling?
It is the same guy.
Seriously, it's the same guy, only now we're really moody and acrobatically slaughtering nasties to heavy metal. This is explained away by the story as the prince being on a bit of a downer, having been hunted relentlessly over 7 years by an evil beast known as the Dahaka as punishment for mucking about with the Sands of Time in the previous game.
Even though in the Sands of Time the prince destroys the Sands of Time, therefore erasing from history the fact he ever used the Sands of Time.
Whatever, time travel. What matters is the prince is now angry, edgy and cool. I mean, to be fair, that is pretty cool. I remember playing this as an 18-year-old and literally thinking it was the coolest thing I'd ever played.
Also, my favourite film back then was The Matrix Reloaded.
I played Tomb Raider The Last Revelation again recently because I had to capture a bit of it for a different Friday feature, and so to get the most out of my $4.99 I've mentioned it here, so we'll have to capture it again. And it reminded me of how remarkably unscathed Lara Croft manages to be at all times. Near the start of your adventure she slips down into an old ruin, falls for a bit and then just carries on like it's any other day.
Fast forward to 2013 and rebooted Tomb Raider is treating its Lara Croft a bit differently.
She takes an absolute beating inside the first half an hour. She's hurled into the sea, set on fire, impaled, grabbed, flung through a cave and then pelted with rocks, and that's all before being harassed both by the elements and by thugs who really should know better than to mess with arguably the most badass protagonist in PlayStation history. 2013 Tomb Raider really was a huge departure from classic Lara. Gone are the family-friendly kid-friendly puzzles and grazed knees, replaced by a story that puts Lara through an emotional meat grinder before spitting her out the other side a hardened warrior.
A warrior who's forced to kill to survive, whereas before, dinosaurs.
From fantastical Indiana Jones escapism to brutal, gritty, new age Hollywood realism, Lara is no longer the pure, untouchable action hero of the 90s. Tomb Raider is much darker these days, and yes, that does mean you've now got to pull rusty iron spikes out of your torso. Next, we've got DMC Devil May Cry. Again, more of a reboot than a sequel, but I can't not include this, seeing as how Dante went from wonderfully camp, wise-cracking demon slayer with lovely locks of platinum hair, to moody, just shave the back and sides please hipster demon slayer in a world where said demons are no longer pantomime bags of fire and shouting, but corrupt politicians and news anchors and whatever the hell that thing is.
It's got cool swearing now too.
Whatever your opinion on Ninja Theory's reboot, and personally I think it's one of the best Devil May Cry games there is, don't at me. You can't deny the gorgeous, grimy beauty of DMC's misshapen world. The landscape is wonderfully intimidating, hunched buildings leering at you from the shadows as they all of a sudden collapse and unfold about you. Where the first Devil May Cry is a love letter to pure, unfiltered 3D action, all guns, swords and swirling trench coats, DMC tries its darndest to make a comment on modern day society. You battle corporate fat cats and corrupt media men and... seriously, what the hell is that?
I'm 1,200 years old.
My favourite bit in the whole game is the boss battle with Bob Barbus. It's incredibly dark and current and funny.
A stylised bullet to the heart of a perceived media hypocrisy. It's one of the most original, visually arresting things I've ever seen in the medium, and perfectly encapsulates Dante's transition to the dark side. Who remembers playing Sonic as a kid? Everyone thought so. Sonic is basically joy in video game form, isn't it? It's fast, bright, and relentlessly fun. The iconic sound of a ring being collected, releasing happy hormones faster than a tub of chocolate ice cream.
Who remembers when Sonic went dark in the form of Shadow the Hedgehog on PS2?
No? Well, here it is. Edgy music and all. Goodbye, Green Hill Zone. Hello, darkness. Even the main menu has grown up and got a gun.
I remember when you were younger and you used to draw me nice pictures.
Shut up and get out of my room, you don't understand me.
I want 3D now, Mum. I want metal. I want a city at night. I want a hedgehog that isn't blue. Blue hedgehogs are so childish. I want... yeah, I still want to collect rings. Next up, it's Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, as if you could get any darker than the first one, what with Gabriel killing his wife, fighting the devil, and looking sad the whole time.
It turns out you can get much darker than that, actually.
How? Make your main character, Dracula, have him slurp the life juice out of an innocent family to restore his powers, and add some stealth sections. Hey presto, you've got yourself a sequel that's gone dark. I particularly like how playing as Gabriel Dracul Belmont flips the entire series on its head, thrusting you into the undead immortal shoes of the series' antagonist and asking you to carve up 10 hells worth of enemies, often finishing them off by sucking out their blood.
Also, the setting is much darker too, taking a leaf out of DMC's book and shifting the action from yawning Gormenghastia landscapes to the modern day.
It's industrial, there are robots you have to sneak past, there are puddles and potholes and almost constant nighttime. Plus, you only need to look at Belmont's default pose, slumped on his throne with the world on his shoulders, to know Lords of Shadow 2 has gone way darker than the original. Our final entry this week is Alice Madness Returns, a follow-up to American McGee's Alice, which itself was an incredibly dark take on Lewis Carroll's beloved 19th century fantasy, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Madness Returns looks like what you'd have expected Tim Burton's Alice to look like, eerie, dreamlike and full of psychological horror. This Wonderland is not all smiling cats and tea parties. It's more a physical manifestation of Alice's internal suffering. Institutionalised after her parents are killed in a fire, she must journey back into Wonderland, portrayed here as the product of an hallucination, which has now been corrupted beyond recognition into a haunting ruin populated by wretched creatures.
Yeah, this ain't Disney. Don't play this with your kids.
What makes Madness Returns even darker is how it uses seemingly benign Wonderlandy type objects and turns them into horrific murder tools. The pepper grinder becomes a Gatling gun, the hobby horse is now a sledgehammer, and the teapot cannon is used to burn enemies to death. The game is a dark journey through Alice's twisted psyche, one that will shock and scare you, especially if you come to it having fought a bunch of cartoon cards in Kingdom Hearts version of the same place. So there we go, 7 times video game sequels went so dark we barely recognised them. Can you think of any other examples? Let us know in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, watch another by hitting one of the links on screen, and subscribe for more every Friday. Thanks for watching and see you next week.